a good opportunity then to start. We'll call the meeting to order and then maybe you want to introduce yourself to Kevin and Jim, and if you guys have any questions, we
Yeah,
can spend a
yeah,
couple
that's great.
seconds saying hello.
Sure. My name's Eric Peterson. I'm the new GM. Voted on by the trustees, started February 6th. Kind of been getting up to speed. Already had a meeting out in the field with Ted, to look at some stuff. So, like I mentioned, I've lived in Harper's Landing for about almost 15 years. And enjoyed that area and very familiar with the neighborhood, and, look forward to serving you as your GM.
Well, we look forward to having you.
That's right. Glad you're here.
Got some big shoes to fill, but I'm sure over time. Over time,
Enjoy your retirement.
And you
I'm
have,
gonna be around a couple of more months.
Okay.
We'll see.
and you have a great staff to work with too, so it's
Absolutely,
gonna be
for
very
sure.
good. Kevin,
That's great.
anything you wanna?
What were you doing before this?
I was in private civil engineering consulting for 22 years
Okay, okay.
in the Houston metro area. And as part of that, I managed groups that managed water districts. So I've been in my whole career, I've managed water districts, either directly as the district engineer or managing a group that we managed, my engineers managed water districts. So
Okay, nice.
very familiar with water districts. It's a little bit different scenario how the Woodlands water districts, operate, but very familiar with the industry, very familiar with all the consultants. I've known SDRA and had relationships with SDRA folks for many, many years on different fronts. So very familiar with the area and the chamber and everything that goes on in the Woodlands. And like I said, lived there for quite a few years.
And I might add that the select committee from the Board of Trustees recommended Eric very highly after they did their search and interviewed with him and so forth. So we're very happy to have you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Item number 2 is receive comments from the public. Doesn't look like we have anybody in the public here. Item number 3 is to consider and act on requests for adjustments to the relief from the specific charges imposed by the district. Anything? All right, next up, moving on to our consent agenda. I have a point of order question. First of all, I have a couple of questions on the items on the consent agenda. Very benign questions that won't change the direction, but should we pull those in order to discuss it separately?
That's the cleanest, easiest
Okay.
thing.
All right.
Appropriate thing to do.
All right, then so I would like to recommend that we remove items 7 and 8 from the consent agenda because I do have questions about that.
Motion for that.
I think so, yeah.
I'm moving. Allow 7 and 8.
All right, in a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
And Kevin seconds it. So all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So now we need to move on to approving the consent agenda, which leaves items 4, 5, and 6. So you have had a chance to look through that, I guess, in your packets. And
Yep.
if there's no questions or anything about that, then we can entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. The newly. All right. Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to receive the consent agenda as presented and altered. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, so item number 7, I just had a question regarding this particular rate scale. Is this the same rate scale that all the MUDs use throughout Woodlands Water? And is it pretty standard? Because I noticed as go ahead.
Well, I'm happy to talk a little bit about it, just to give y'all some background on it. So MUDs are required each year to adopt a wage rate scale for construction projects, which is just the minimum amount that can be paid to different workers on each of those projects. And so we typically recommend that you adopt the Department of Labor's wage rate scales that they put out for each county. And that's what y'all have always done in the past. I think a long time ago, MUDs used to go out and survey the area and come up with their own wage rate scale. But the norm now is just to use the Department of Labor's. And so we have in your packet the Department of Labor's wage rate scale for Montgomery County. And you'll see it's very detailed, each type of worker has a specific dollar amount that's just the bare minimum that they need to be paid. But I'm told that based on the market, they often get paid a lot more than that.
I would think so, because some of those numbers were very low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Kate, Katie, I had a question about, I noticed a couple of areas it said certain counties and Montgomery was listed with along with another county. Wouldn't it be the same for all counties in our area? Or what would make it different for Montgomery County as opposed to San Jacinto County or Harris County? Why would,
It's all just based on the types of projects in that area. So I know, some of the counties that are closer to like the port, there's kind of different scales that would go into there. And then Harris County has kind of a more like metropolitan based scale. So I think it's just based on the type of
Okay.
projects in that area.
and then my last question goes back to, is this the same exact survey that, wage survey that all the other MUDs within Woodlands Water are adopting?
Yes.
So nothing different for our MUD. Okay. All right, that's all the questions I had. Kevin, do you have any?
Yeah, this is done on an annual basis. We,
It is,
the
yes.
wages annual.
Technically done last month, but the Department of Labor hadn't finished putting out all their scales, so.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
All right. So then I guess we need to entertain a motion to accept accept and approve the survey wage scale as presented.
I'll motion.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so item number 8, I did have a quick question on as well. So I noticed this was on the agenda last time and I wasn't here, so I didn't know if there was a whole lot of discussion that went on about this. But I just wanted to see exactly what this was and if somebody could just give us a brief update on, it says, consider an act on approving attendance and expenses for district and or Woodlands Water Trustee meetings and business. So-
It may be helpful, the background, this was put under the consent agenda just for efficiency purposes for the MUDs. But this is when you attend your MUD meeting here, or you attend an AWBD function, either the annual conference or the winter conference, or there's in your packet, you're gonna be hearing about that. And you get reimbursed for that. You get a per diem for that and reimburse the expenses. This covers those sorts of events.
And is the per diem pretty standard across all the meetings,
The
Jim, or
per
is it,
diem is standard at $150 per day.
it's not gonna change per meeting?
That's right.
And so what we're approving then is that per diem, if any of us attends any of those particular meetings, and that's
Either this meeting or any others outside of this.
relative to the Woodlands Water, okay. All right, that was my only concern and question. Jim, anything?
No, it's been on there a long time. So.
Okay, good. All right. So then we'll need to entertain a motion and a second to approve it, as it's stated.
I move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, for entertaining my questions. All right, moving on to the regular agenda. Receive the San Jacinto River Authority Woodlands Division report.
Afternoon, Summer Havasti here with the San Jacinto River Authority, as well as Jason Williams. Update I handed out earlier, there was an update to your report. It did affect the graph on page 1 and the chart on page 2, but the stapled copy is the most updated copy. And then I have an item to give you guys an update on the infrastructure funding. And at this point, there's no update. It's still the same as it's been. They're working on getting that put together. If you guys have any questions on the information provided, please let us know. We'll be happy to answer.
All right. Any questions, discussion? Jim?
No, none.
Kevin? Hey. Well, that's probably the easiest and quickest report you've ever had to give. All right, moving on. Item number 10 is receive the attorney's report. Katie?
Nice to see y'all again, Katie Fazio. Brian does apologize for not being here. He does not like to miss the meetings, but we don't have much to report. He wanted me to remind y'all that the Texas legislature is currently in session. And to point you to the AWBD website, they've just posted a list of bills that could affect the MUDs. And so you can access that list, and they each have a brief little description of them. So it's helpful to look at. And we have 2 lobbyists from our firm who are in Austin. They've been coming back and forth and are staying very updated on all these bills. And we will prepare a summary closer to the end of session for you.
Okay. I do have a couple of questions, but let me see if, Jim, you have any questions?
Okay.
I noticed in our packet, you provided us the list of the House bills that are currently of interest, the BD. And I noticed just,
Your packets.
Yeah. but I noticed that it said the category is board meetings and it says House Bill 1312 is relating to the meetings of the boards of directors of the municipal utility district. Anything in particular you can share on that item that?
No, I remember seeing too. I don't know anything further about that one, but I could find out and let you know.
Okay,
I
I just
could
got,
just send a quick email on how to get it.
okay, I just didn't know if there was anything we needed to be aware of or something that might be coming down the pipeline or.
Yeah, and I saw that one too, but I just don't know.
Okay.
any more
Jim,
about
are
it.
you aware of anything that?
No, at the last AWBD conference, they talked about trying to change or better define where the meeting could be held. I know a lot of MUDs meet in the attorney's offices that can be a number of miles away from the MUD. And I remember there being some discussion about there may be a push to try to get that meeting to be held either in the MUD or closer to the MUD. That's the only thing that comes to my mind.
Eric, anything from yours?
Not about that one, but
Okay.
there, in addition to that, there's been other ones that, location, there's been, are you required to video and audio? Do you need to put it onto your website? There's a number of different things that have been tried over the years. Most of them haven't passed. And that was one of the things that, to mention too, is a lot of those could be DOA already. Some of them just don't go anywhere because there's how many overall bills, thousands of bills.
4,000 and something, Brian
That
said.
there you
Yeah.
go.
You can make it through.
I thought it was 4,000. So if there's anything pertinent to us, you'll let us know, right? That's kind of what you do.
Yes,
Your
yes.
scouts.
I'll update it as it goes along.
Anything else?
That's it for the attorney's report.
All right.
The next item is mine too.
All right. So item number 11, consider approval of the joint election agreement and election services agreement in connection with the May 6, 2023 defined area election and bond and maintenance tax election. Katie?
These two agreements, this we didn't make it in your packet, so we brought copies for you. These are just the agreements that Montgomery County, this is gonna be a joint election with Montgomery County, which is the same that y'all did for the director's election last year. So these documents are prepared by Montgomery County. It's just their standard form and they look pretty much identical to what's from last year. We are still waiting on a couple of the exhibits for the election services agreement from the county, but we wanted to go ahead and get them signed and approved today. And as soon as we get in those exhibits, we'll get them submitted.
What's the deadline for a May 6th election? When do all the paperwork have to be signed and completed and everything else?
So the order calling the election, which y'all approved last month, I believe. That one is kind of the biggest elected document. I think it's due the first week of April, and we have that one already finished, translated, all the exhibits ready for that one. I'm not sure if the deadline on these two, I think it's probably just sooner rather than later, but the county is the ones who needs to send us. I think it's Exhibit D is the one we're waiting for, so that's in their report. But we will make sure that we have people in our office who specialize in the elections and make sure we stay on top of them.
All right. Good.
But I know we already submitted the order.
Okay. And so to this point, I guess we've done everything we needed to do in order for this defined area to get going, and we've paid the money, I believe, to Howard Hughes or whatever we needed to pay, or they paid us, and we're good with all that. So we're good to go. All right. Very good. All right. Anything else?
Nope, we just need improvement of those two.
All right. So you.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve both the joint election and the election services agreement.
All right. So Kevin's made a motion.
Second.
Kevin second it. We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the election agreement as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
That's both of them, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he made the motion to accept both the agreement and the joint agreement. All right, item number 12. Receive the WWA staff information on the pavement and underground utility conditions along Trade Center Boulevard and Donwick. Eric, you want to take this since you were out on the run with Gemini and?
Yes. So we, Jim and I and Ted went out, I guess about a month or so ago to drive, Trade Center Boulevard as well as Donwick to look at what a resident had kind of pointed out as being a point of interest related to kind of some undulations in the pavement, particularly on Trade Center Boulevard and then around the corner, right at the corner at Donwick, at two inlet locations, storm sewer inlet locations. So we looked at that, we drove it several times. We then presented the information to the county and the precinct on Trade Center Boulevard. And they've come back and they've looked at it and they've come back and said, we really don't have any plans to address those issues on Trade Center Boulevard at this time. On the two areas on Donwick, I've presented in front of you some pictures of both of the storm sewer inlets on the east and west sides of Donwick. And as you can see, in both cases, the kind of the apron and the inlet itself appears to not only be cracked, but potentially kind of slumped down a little bit on both. So the first three pictures that say east is really the first ones of the whole thing. And then the next two are from either side, kind of showing either side. And then the last picture is of the west one across the street, where the, as you can see, kind of on the right side on the west picture, there's some settling, right there on that right side. So we would like to kind of go out. We did do some testing to identify that there's no structural damage component inside the inlet itself. But as you can see, obviously there's some settling around those aprons. So I think what we'd like to do is go out and take a closer look on what would be needed in order to address those, and whether or not it's, we think it is severe enough to do. And then come back to you next month with a further recommendation. You're probably looking at, this would probably be a mud repair, and each one are probably in that $7,000 to $10,000 range, just depending on how messy we gotta, it is rather than anything.
So when you say a mud, you mean mud rather than the county?
Right.
And so if we were to repair these aprons or inlets, whatever you refer to them, that doesn't necessarily fix the problem of the road dipping, right? If the road is dipping there, if we just address this, does that fix the dip in any way?
Well, in this case, there's supposed to be a dip. So this would be the low area in the street. So in these cases, different than Trade Center Boulevard, these really weren't noticeable dips necessarily. These were just, yes, where they've kind of sagged, but this is the low area anyway. So you're going to want a little bit of a dip in that area just so it drains properly.
Right.
I don't recall in these two areas that there was any further dipping in between the road between the two inlets. I think the road was pretty sound, it appeared, as far as drivability.
When you guys talked to the county, did the county mention anything about, they just repaired Donwick from the Woodlands line to 242, but not from the Woodlands line in to Trade Center? Did they mention any plan to resurface that or fix that at all or anything?
No,
No.
there is no plan to do anything further on Trade Center or Donwick. at this
By the
point.
county? Okay.
By the county.
And that's precinct 4, right?
Correct.
Which
Yes,
is
correct.
county
Correct.
So Eric,
crazy.
yeah. To repair this, it's just aesthetics, right? This is not affecting drainage in any way or?
It doesn't appear to be affecting drainage. I think what we want to take a closer look at is how would it affect, driving safety with those two little dips right there. This is generally not an area where a person's tire is going to be on, because the road is so wide, they're not going to be hugged up next to the curb like that. But it's still in the road right away, and it's still in the road, pavement. So it's something to take a closer look at for sure.
The resident who brought this to our attention also talked to me on the street one day, and the reason I asked for this item to be put on the agenda was so that he could come here and explain his concerns and talk about it. But of course, he couldn't make today's meeting. But he did talk to me on the street, and he said, and of course, he's using civil engineering jargon that I'm not real sure about, but he said, take a post hole digger and go just outside and I guess he's referring to the Trade Center area. Just go just outside the drainage or the curb, I guess, and go down and far enough till you get to concrete sand, Jim, or what's it called?
It's stabilized.
Cement stabilizing sand, and he seems to think that that was part of the problem, that wasn't done initially. Is that anything we should address or be concerned with?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
I mean, we certainly need to monitor. I mean, when you can see, as you saw, there's some mild kind of dips in certain areas. But from the county's perspective, it's not causing any safety concerns. Doesn't look like it's getting worse. It's probably been, I know when I lived there, they were there, and some residents said, well, I kind of like it because it makes it so people don't speed down the
Right.
road. To a certain degree, there's almost reverse speed bumps
right,
to a certain degree. And it really only affects you if you do, again, get over closer to that curve, which Trade Center's even much larger in that area. And
Right.
so I think that's why the county's kind of,
so Eric, when you come back to us with the information, are you gonna make a recommendation as to whether or not we should or shouldn't do this project? Is that, so,
we'll be
okay,
prepared to do that and hopefully bring some costs as well. We'll
And,
know a little bit more about that as well.
and will that then be up to the board to decide to pay to do that?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
and I'm assuming that,
Or whenever the county accepted that originally, they should have accepted all of this, shouldn't they?
Well, this is, I
Of course,
think,
getting the county to do something.
well, that's kind of where the county and the MUD responsibility is right on the line, because this is really a storm sewer inlet. And although it's arguably part of the road, it also is our storm sewer. Right,
Drainage, yeah.
exactly. So that,
Yeah, there's just goes way back when it was, and when it was accepted by the county, goes way back.
yes.
Sure.
all right, well, thank you for that. I appreciate the update, and I'll tell Ron to look at the video and he can see what the discussion was, and if he has any other concerns, I'm sure we'll hear from him, and he'll let us know.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions on that topic? Good. All right, moving on. Item number 13, consider an act on district customer communication and information message. And I know you guys talked about this a little bit at the last meeting that I wasn't at, and I was a little, when I read the minutes, I wasn't quite sure what this was referring to, but I had a conversation with Jim earlier, and he informed me that it was just to put out some information very similar to what other MUDs have done. And I think you guys looked at a format possibly last week. I
We
mean,
looked
last
at an example.
an
Yeah.
example, which could be used as a template if we decided to do that. I think one of the topics, if anything, that we need to put out there more than anything would be the information on the new annexation of the new property and what that might mean to the current residents. So do we need to take an action on this today, or is it something we can discuss and then present, or?
You don't necessarily need to take action today. It's more of whether or not you want to do it. Most, I think, of the MUDs have decided that they do want to do it. Some of them are still working on it with John. If you decide that you think this is something that you'd like to do, a lot of what the other MUDs are doing is identifying one or two board members to work with John to take essentially the template and then make it your own. Or there's a lot of information that's kind of on the template that can translate to any MUD. And then some of the MUDs have said, well, I'd really like to add my one or two other additional accomplishments that we think our MUD did, whatever that is. So that you can have the opportunity to make it yours if you'd like.
And is there any deadline for this? I mean, is there a deadline to get it out or anything, printing wise or mail wise or anything?
Well, the only other thing you might want to think about is, do you want it to be a e-blast or do you want it to be in the bill? And some are doing one or both, depending, just because some people don't get the paper bill and some people do, and some people get the e-blast and some don't. That was the thinking, I think, on some of the MUDs.
And I guess that cost wise, it wouldn't be too much for us. We're a small district, and so I wouldn't think the cost would be prohibitive.
Yeah, probably, I saw it for another MUD, well, for one of the other larger MUDs, it was 1,500-ish, 1,200, somewhere around 1,000 probably.
I think it's less than $1 per insert.
I think that's what we talked about last meeting. Yeah, about $1.
So it's not terrible.
Insert.
Well, I did read in the minutes that Kevin was going to get with me and we were going to talk about it. So if you guys are okay with that,
Oh, yeah.
we'll pick that up and we'll try to visit with John
Mhm.
and get something going, and we'll try to get something out there. Cause I think, just having communication with the customer, if you will, and being transparent about what's happening is very important. So I think this is a perfect opportunity and a good tool for us to do that with. Fair enough? Okay. All right.
You know, it just occurred to me, another thought, the defined area is a little more complex of a topic. It might be appropriate to put together a white paper, if you will, to put on Mud 39's website regarding the defined area. That way you can send residents that have a question about it. We'll just go to our website and the topic is discussed there. Because I know, Ted, you had put together a pretty good draft and Eric Peterson had tweaked it. So you might think about going ahead and doing something special and on that topic, just put on your website.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is the big topic that needs to be addressed, I think. If we get questions, that's what it is.
Yeah, and you can't really discuss that on the template that we put together.
Yeah.
So I think maybe both might want to be.
It's a good idea.
Well, on the template, we can refer to the white paper and just have a link on there. If we send it out electronically, they can just click on that. It'll take us
Yeah.
directly to the website.
Yes, John's actually created one of those QR codes for various topics too. You could even
Oh, good.
link one to that. People just goes right to it.
Okay.
If you want.
Well, then Kevin and I will get together and we'll get with John and we'll see what we need to do and put that out. And of course, we'll have legal review it, whatever that process is. And have you guys look at it as well and we'll get it sent out. All right. So thank you. All right. Good job. Thank you, guys. Item number 14, receive the general manager's report.
All right.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Wanted to update you on a couple of things. As you probably know or may know, Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District did appoint a new member to the vacant position. His gentleman's name is Gary Dent and lives in Mud One. So that's something new. In your packet, you'll find in the very back, there is 2 flyers for a couple AWD events that are coming up. One is for the AWD Spring Seminar, which is on the evening of April 13th. The topic is Texas housing trends. And then the other insert is a reminder of the AWD Summer Conference, which is in Corpus Christi this year, June 22nd through the 24th. If you've never been to a conference, one of those conferences, they can be very informative on these seminars. They've got a number of seminars that you can sit through throughout the day, both Friday and Saturday. So the early bird registration is a little bit cheaper if you get it done here in the next few weeks. If not, it starts to ramp up pretty good. So if you're thinking about going to the conference, take a look at that as well. Let's see, a couple more updates. As I think most know, the strategic plan was approved by the trustees, so unanimously. So that was a lot of work over the last year or so to get that over the finish line. To give you an update on the One Water Task Force, the township met last week in a planning meeting to talk about potential resurrection of the One Water Task Force. They did leave that meeting with the idea that they would bring it before the township for an actual vote to go ahead and resurrect the One Water Task Force, which was created a few years ago and then kind of has faded off in the last year or so. But it looked like there was enough interest with folks to probably bring that up before the township. And then last thing I had was the PEC Public Education Committee did meet as well last week to talk about the quarterly communication plan. That there's actually an insert here. You can kind of see what some of the output documents have been going to some of the outlets, both virtual and paper. So you can kind of get an idea of what some of the things that we're putting out. They also talked about, in light of the fact that the strategic plan was approved, the need for a much larger public outreach campaign. And so we're going to be working with SGRA and others to start building that communication outreach campaign that is going to be needed just to inform the community about the upcoming infrastructure that is going to be improved and expanded upon. So that'll be in the motion. And that's all I had.
All right. Couple questions, Eric, if you don't mind. So this AWBD annual conference that's in June. Jim, have you ever attended that?
No.
Eric, Kevin, are you interested in going at all or?
It's in June?
Yeah.
I don't know, potentially, yeah.
Is it open to all board members? Can we all go if we choose to do? And it's at district expense, I'm assuming?
Mhm.
Jim, is that something you might be interested in or?
Yeah, that's.
Okay. All right, we'll talk about it. I
Okay,
guess we'll take
yeah.
it offline.
And I'm happy, I've been very involved with AWD over the years, spoken at those conferences before, and be happy to, if anyone hasn't been and is curious about what it is, we can talk on the side and I can explain what it is.
Well, I think, yeah, I asked Jim a while back whether or not it was a kind of a worthy event, I guess, for us to spend money, but for also to go, especially being new mud directors. I think it might be something that's of value to us to learn a little bit more about the overall idea and structure of what's happening, and not only here, but throughout the state, I guess, and wherever else we could learn a little bit. So,
And the organization is your advocate. So, you know, if it's legislative issues, a lot of the things that are on the legislative summary are coming out of AWBD and through that leadership. I know Squarespace and Harding is very involved. Howard is very involved in the legislative process. There's lobbyists involved. And so there's a lot of, if there are, you know, water sewer drainage or just general mud things that need to be addressed in the legislature, AWBD through its consultants are very involved in that process. So they are your advocate for sure.
okay. Very good. Thank you, Eric. Item number 15, receive the Woodlands Water Trustees Report. And I know that's also in the packet. I read through that. Eric, you want to take that and then I'll chime in after if there's anything other than.
I think I really covered all those, most of those things. The one other thing I think that a couple MUDs added to it was the Finance and Audit Committee did meet as well to hear a little bit about the 10-year plan from SDRA, and SDRA is going to be working on that, and we would expect to see some modification at a presentation at the April meetings. So
There's a meeting on the 29th.
that's right.
Committee meeting.
Two things I just wanted to add from that particular meeting, and Eric talked about both of them, but I just want to give you a little bit different perspective. One is on the Woodlands Water. What's it called?
One water.
One Water, thank you. The One Water Task Force has been kind of resurrected, and I think this is something that's very important to us, not only our district and not only to Woodlands Water overall, but to the community as well. So it will be something that I'll be advocating for with the township. I think the board members of the township now, for the most part, are very much in favor of this. My personal observation from the past is what happened was everybody got together after the flood. What can we do about flood mitigation and so forth? And not that they were pointing fingers, but my impression was nobody really knew what to do in and of themselves. And then when they got this bigger group formed, it's like, okay, well, nobody's taking the lead here, and it kind of just fizzled out. So I think what needs to happen is we, Woodlands Water in general, need to support the Woodlands Township, and they probably need to take the lead on this, in my opinion, at this point. But it has to be more of an area-wide thing, not just a district, not just Woodlands Water, but it has to involve the county and the region and so forth. So I think that will go along and go further, and we'll see a little bit more of a formal organization, if you will. I think everybody who was participated in the past, I think their heart was in it. I think they were in it for the right reasons. But I think because it fizzled out, you know, there was not enough interest, it fizzled out. Now I think people are a little bit more conscientious about what's going on with not only drainage and flooding, but just water usage and sewage usage and so forth. So I think it will, as it's resurrected, I think it'll be something much more viable this time than it might have been last time. And I think the trustees probably have that same sense about being involved. I'm not speaking for them. That's just my take on it. And the other thing was, I think the Public Education Committee did an excellent job. And in your packets is some information that they're going to be putting out over the next quarter, I think it was.
Yeah, there's a
Or
different
so.
topic each quarter.
Yeah.
And so water quality will be coming up next, and we're in a number of different outlets, from the Chronicle to the Impact to Woodlands Magazine. There's several different outlets that we use.
And again, I think that education piece is going to be very important for all of us down the road as it relates to not only conservation, but just use in general. So that was my only two tidbits about the trustee meeting. Anything else? Good. All right. So moving on to item number 16, recess to closed session. Any need for a closed session? No? All right. So that negates number 17. Number 18, discuss any matters for placement on future agenda. Gentlemen?
a future agenda item, but I did find a little summary of House Bill 1312. If you wanted to talk about that for a second. Jim was right. This is a bill that is proposing that you can't have MUD meetings more than 5 miles outside of the boundaries of the district.
So what does that do for us
I'm
then?
gonna say, we gotta be right on that edge, right?
You may have to move.
Most of our SPH's districts actually meet at our offices and don't meet in the district. So I think this would affect a whole lot of districts that just did make it through. So we'll definitely keep you updated on this one.
Okay,
Hopefully it dies.
yeah,
A form of that has been on probably the last 3 sessions.
okay. And I understand the reason behind it, I would guess, but I think in our particular circumstance, you know, even though we might not be within that 5 mile radius, we are within the Woodlands water scenario, so I don't think that was gonna be an issue for us, but thank you for that, Katie.
Yeah, that's good.
Any other items for future agenda? Dan, you made it just in time. We're about to adjourn.
Good. I got perfect timing. No, nothing other than we discussed.
So other than follow up on the Donwick and Trade Center stuff,
Yeah.
anything else? No, good. All right. Well, item number 18 is done. Hearing no further business to be conducted by this board, we will adjourn at 12:37.